pledge, and Don knows will lead us in prayer, and then we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to live in this country where we can meet and discuss different ideas and options and do so freely. And we ask that everything that we do here this evening be pleasing to you. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thanks, Don. I don't know if everybody got an agenda, but they're scattered around all over the place, so we will follow that. First item that's on the agenda is public comment regarding the agenda items, and there's only one thing on the agenda to discuss. And with the number of people here tonight that may want to speak, I would ask that we keep our comments to 2 minutes or less and see how that goes. So do we have any public comment regarding the agenda item? Yes. State your name.
Mariah Mershon. I would just like to read exactly what we're talking about here. In 2013, the council voted and approved a resolution that says, whereas after studying these areas, specifically all of Madison Township, except the town of Linden, and all of Sugar Creek Township, the council now finds that these areas have become undesirable for or impossible of normal development and occupancy because of a lack of development, cessation of growth, deterioration of improvements or character of occupancy, age, obsolescence, substandard buildings, and other factors which have impaired values or prevented normal development of property or use of property. At one of the past council meetings, I asked the council what study was done, who went out and talked to the people of these townships, who did a land study, who did a income study, who studied the tax base, researched this, documented this before this was put in. And the answer is no one. For those of you that live in those townships, no one did anything except said, hey, let's just do this, voted on it, and it passed. I don't live in that township, but I don't want my township to have to face this. So that's what we're here about tonight, is to get this backtracked because proper protocol was not done in 2013, and this shouldn't be on the books today. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
April Johnson, and I do live in that township, in Madison Township, and I, along with all my neighbors, don't think any of us look like the slums. And in fact, it said that no business could be developed in this area. We've established a business in that township, and it's growing and doing well. And I look at the road that I take, 4.5 miles to 231, and Mark, you have a beautiful llama farm with your llamas traveling around the country. I think that's impressive. I looked at other businesses. There's Denhart's. They look like they're doing great. And what a great family business to have in the area. Right across the train tracks is a multinational company. They look like they're doing good. I know there's a photographer down the road. There's an Etsy shop down the road. We are not a dying community. We are doing good. And we may not all have big signs and bright lights out in front of our businesses, but it is thriving, and that does not describe us.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I'm Lindsay Keller. I'm Scott Township trustee. I'm not going to go through some of the things that have been covered, but I just want to say I'm a farmer's daughter, and I think farming is pretty important, and I think rural area is important, and at the risk of sounding like so many other Americans, I'm offended at some of the things I've heard, but as a trustee, we're responsible for emergency services, and my understanding is that, you know, if we need to bring a helicopter in, I'm not responsible for contracting with that, but I would feel responsible, and I would hate to see someone, you know, not get the care they need because of that. Personally, I have a concern about the ditching and how that would work if those were, we had to pay quite a bit of money last year on ditching, and I'm assuming that would be an issue in the future. And I can say too, 15, 20 years ago, I traveled globally a lot. And I remember being in Germany about 20 years ago, and there were wind turbines, and we were just astonished when we saw those. But when you look at articles now about that, they're talking about how household power costs have doubled since that time. This is not startup costs, this is now. And that's worrying the industry too, which is something I don't think we want, so.
Thank you, Betsy. Yes.
All right, my name's Greg Fuller, I'm the Madison Township trustee. I wasn't in office or anything at this time, so I guess my question would be is what is it that, if you could help describe this a little bit first, so we know what we're looking at as going forward. What did this take away then? What does this give us now? You know, as far as status and, you know, things of that nature. I think I'm a little unclear, because I live there, I had a business there as well. Yeah, I like it the way that it is, that's why I'm here. But yeah, I was just wondering if we could get clarification on what exactly you're asking of us, or where does this go from, you know, here as far as rescinding this, or is this just tax-based? Is this has to do with property rights, or, you know, things of that nature, just, you know, some kind of a...
Okay. So basically, the ERA is set up, they're set up to, as a mechanism to give tax abatement for a company that wants to come into an area and start a new business. And it's, I think it was probably originally designed for an urban slum area. It was the premise for an ERA to go in and take an area that was really downtrodden and bring it back to life. I think it's been abused a lot, just as a means of creating a basis for tax abatement. And I will say that I do not believe that the county's attorney, Mr. Taylor, and I don't believe that any of the councilmen at the time were considering what this really, what the terms of that mean to the people that live in those districts. I don't think they were really doing it in that manner. They were doing it as a mechanism to create tax abatement for the wind farm company that was wanting it. The reason that I want to rescind this is because as long as that ERA stands, anyone else can come in and use the ERA for tax abatement. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't collectively give tax abatement to someone, but I would want to start over, and I would, obviously, my personal feeling is I don't think that Madison and Sugar Creek townships qualify as an ERA stated as what an ERA is. So there would have to be another means to give the tax abatement, because I would never declare those areas basically a rural ghetto or a slum. So this is just really just backing up something that was done without due diligence, I believe. I don't think anyone really meant that these people are not worthy. I just think it was done for the sake of creating the tax abatement. And so that's
And, I'm sorry, and just one more question on that as well. I read some of the information that, and I had that same thing that you were reading as well. and it talks specifically to wind farms as far as abatements for business personal property tax and all. Am I correct in saying that Indiana does not have personal property or business personal property tax anymore? Didn't that go away in 2017, or is that different concerning that large of a?
Yeah, I can't answer. I know it did for small business. I don't know if it,
Right, yeah, I didn't have to, right, as of 2017, right, I didn't have to pay business personal property tax anymore. I paid 2018 was the
I
last year.
don't know how, if that applies to large corporations.
Small
Right.
months, they wouldn't ask for the date.
Minutes? Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess my question there would be, if that were the case, if that would make, because that was why this was put in, the way that I understand it, was for their personal property tax abatement. But would that basically, if it doesn't exist in Indiana anymore for businesses, does that just go away? I mean, there'd be no purpose for it then.
That's a possibility. But even with that being said, I would like to formally make this, my personal feeling was make this formally go away.
Absolutely.
$20,000, not much. Go ahead, Mindy, stand up, tell us what you're
Sorry,
saying.
$20,000, I believe, is the limit for business personal property to be taxed. Just,
Thank you.
thanks.
I guess I'm gonna make a comment. I wasn't on the council when this happened. I'm not sure too many of us was other than Dick at the time, but, and I'm hearing the way they describe what it is. And I can't imagine at the time that we did this, that we were trying to describe these areas as poverty-driven. I think this ERA designation was probably thought as a possible tool to draw businesses in and help. And obviously, wasn't handled right or wasn't done right and hasn't worked. And not by not being on the council at the time, knowing how it was described at that time, if it was described the same way, then I'm not sure how it got by. But I gotta imagine that the council was thinking at that time that this was a tool to possibly help growth, not degrade the property values by any means. So, and I'm, at this point, I'm not sure there's any need for it anymore with what's going on, so. But I kinda hate hearing that it makes it sound like the council back then, which again, like I said, I wasn't on it, was devaluing these properties, and I don't think that's what was meant to be done for.
If I could, it's a statutory tool that you have to make certain findings in order to comply with Indiana code to indicate that these areas are ripe for this type of abatement or development. And so the council back in 2013 determined that they would make this finding first, and then in the hopes of drawing in corporations that would seek abatement. And so that's why this resolution in particular, 2013-9, it's predecessor to 2013-12, because they had to lay the groundwork first before they went to the abatement for this windmill company. So that's it. And so, sorry to interrupt. So because of that, they had to make certain findings according to the Indiana code, and the language is pretty specific in the code, and that's why I think the language is driven the way it is undesirable as it might sound.
And let me just add that this was a thought by the leadership at the time, and I think it was still Montgomery County Economic Development, along with the commissioners and the council, that this was 10 years ago. Let's see, was it 2000? What year was that? 13. So that wind energy in Montgomery County would bring great economic growth and development, and it was a good thing, and they were doing it because they really believed that this was what they were being they were being told that this was a good thing, and they were believing that this was a good thing for the county. And as the years have passed, a lot more information has surfaced about wind energy and wind farms and the people living near them. And as time has went by, it has become less of a thought that that's something that we want in our county. And I don't think that they were doing it out of malice. I think they were really sincerely thought that this was going to be what people wanted, and it was a good thing. And, you know, and I'll just say this, because I'm guilty, as all of you are, that we weren't plugged in, or this would have never happened. Because if this room full of people here would have been there when this was going down, it wouldn't have went down. There was not a word said. And I have to say that I think that advertising is a loophole, because things are advertised in very small print in the classified ads. How many read that? We don't. And, you know, it probably was advertised, but we were all busy living our lives, and we didn't ever think that this would come to fruition at that point. It was, but as far as the reason it was set up was not just to willy-nilly hope that it brought in some industry. A lot of times in this case, the company that wants to come in requests the ERA. So Sugar Creek Wind, or ACUO, requested that the county council set up an ERA, and because the council and economic development people thought that it was a win for the county, crossed the T's and dotted the I's to make it as part of the, I hate to use the word plan, because this is a problem I have with some planning, is like, planning is not always good. Planning can be bad. If you make a bad plan and you follow through with it, then you have to live with it. So, you know, all planning is not that good, and in this case, I think the planning was bad, and I'm planning to fix that, so. Yes.
I did a little research on the ERA.
Name?
Oh, Tom Knieven, Crawfordville. And I went to the library and looked through the Journal Review for the entire month that the hearing was supposed to be done. And I even went a few days after that hearing date. I found nothing in the Journal Review advertising that public hearing. So that's one issue. The other issue is I was under the impression that you had to have a specific project in order to trigger the company to come to you guys, or to come to the council in order to get the ERA and therefore the abatement. And I don't think there's any record that the company ever submitted the right paperwork or the formal paperwork in order to make that process even begin. So
I believe you are correct on both counts, because I also searched for the advertisement, and I could not find that it was advertised.
yeah.
And also, you're correct that they're generally very specific to a company. That a person, any of you could request, come to the council and say, I want to claim my property as an ERA. So it can be brought on by a property owner, or a company that wants to revitalize an area would come and request that you designate an area an ERA. At that point, the designating body, the fiscal body, should do their due diligence and make sure that that area actually qualifies as an ERA. In this case, it was just done as a matter of getting the paperwork done. Not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but if you look back at it, I don't think that, obviously, those townships do not qualify under the premise of what an ERA is. not even close.
Right.
So
But
it was kind of done wrong.
Yeah, if the trigger for the ERA and the abatement is the company providing the paperwork to the council that lays out the economic benefits of their operation to the county, as well as what benefits the county's gonna receive for providing the abatement, so that the council can do their due diligence from an economic standpoint. So if they didn't file the paperwork right, and if there wasn't a public hearing, shouldn't this thing just be nullified?
There's
Just
other
out.
ways to advertise than just in the journal, and a lot of times advertising can just be at the courthouse, okay? There also is, it's also publicly notified at the meetings, so they can verbally say, we're going to have a public hearing at such and such a date, at such and such a time. I haven't gone back and checked, but I mean, there are other ways than just putting it in the newspaper. So, it's ideally you put it in the paper, but it's not required.
But
Okay.
you're also correct, Tom, that the company has to file certain paperwork. And from all the research I've done, that was not done correctly.
Right.
There was no SB1 form that has been signed. That was one of the requirements. There were quite a few requirements, of which were halfway done or done not properly. So you're correct that as it stands, if it were to be challenged, it wasn't done correctly in the first place.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you're right, it should be, but we're just gonna,
Right, I
we're gonna
mean,
vote to.
if you don't have a project, you can't have an ERA,
Right.
right?
The concept here is to close the door on it
Understand?
and make sure that it's a done deal.
Do you know when any of that paperwork was signed? The date?
Which paperwork?
The paperwork that wasn't quite done correctly? Do you have any?
Oh, I'm sure I have it here, let's see. They did fill out an SB1 form, and I don't have that with me, but it was not signed, which makes it not valid, because it says a signed SB1 form. Not really a date as to when that all went down, but it would have been right in the time frame of when this was initiated, so.
Marcus, that's all after the, when you say that the paperwork wasn't filled out properly, you mean the paperwork following afterward to get the abatement?
Correct.
Right. Yeah. So, again, I wasn't here, but my estimation is that this company came to the council, had some nice ideas, they sold them arguably a bill of goods on what they wanted to do. Then they brought to the council, I'm sure they educated the council that, hey, before we're gonna get this abatement, we need to do this ERA, and showed them the Indiana Code site that talked about that needed to be, again, to lay the groundwork to make it attractive and to make it possible to have this abatement happen in this way. So I'm sure they educated the council thought that's fine, signed off on that, that's your resolution 2013-9, and then the abatement approval came later with the 2013-12 resolution. And then afterward, though, the company still had to follow certain rules with regard to paperwork with the county and the state in order to get the abatement, and it just petered out, it sounds like. And so they've never really done anything with it, and so it's sort of just sat there dormant since then. As far as the project goes, it's really a finding that makes the area available to projects of that nature. And this company is listed in the 2013-9, so they were what the council had in mind when they passed this ERA. But I think it's a little broader than that. I think it's something that another company could come in on the tail of this and also use that area because it's an ERA finding already. So it's not, I don't think it has to be that one project, it could be multiple ones on down the road. It just says that the area is ripe for development, and we want to do things it's not right for development, we want to do things to make it right for development. We want to spur growth, and so we have to find this finding first in order to kind of, to do that. So, yeah, this company, I'm quite confident educated the council on what needed to be done. And, you know, again, as Mark said, arguably there may not have been enough due diligence. And of course, at the time, I'm sure people didn't understand the import of what it means to have windmills in the county, and probably didn't think about the various negative impacts, you know, so. Okay.
Well, I think the knowledge that we have now compared to what we had probably 5 years ago, the council had then, you know, looking back in hindsight, you know, we all, in our lives, we all make mistakes that we look back on, you know, boy, I wish I hadn't done that. I think that might be the case now. You know, we know more what's going on, we're more knowledgeable on ramifications, and I guess we're having this discussion tonight.
Hi, I'm Tracy Slavens. So everything that you said, Mr. Ramondo, how do we keep this from happening to the rest of our townships? I mean, obviously, things were done
Right.
incorrectly,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want my township to be able to.
Well, so I think that this council, as Mark just said perfectly, is I think this council understands that you've got to look before you leap, right? And, you know, you need to make intelligent decisions and not just take what a company brings to you. I mean, you know, my firm's been involved with municipal law in the past, and we've had certain, you know, certain executives that, you know, if a billboard company comes to them and gets them on the right day, next thing you know, you have billboards everywhere. So you gotta be careful about who you're listening to, and you gotta weigh both sides. And I'm not saying that council didn't do it, there may have been no other side. I mean, they may have ever, you know, talked about having these meetings, and if nobody shows, they don't get that other side of the story, right? But I think this council is, you know, has been informed, like Mark said, and is gonna look before they leave. As far as the future goes, if the council were to, want to retract this ERA, the way you do that is to have, in order to terminate something like this, you have to do the termination in the same manner in which you had the passing of it. And so that's why the council, at the last meeting, took the steps to set this hearing, and to input from the public and anyone else is interested. And then, once that happens, if the court, I'm used to being in the courtroom. If the council were to find that it should be withdrawn or terminated, then at the next council meeting, there'd be a motion and a resolution passed, and it'd be terminated. As far as other areas, then, you know, they'll take those as they come. I mean, there are reasons for this ERA in the statute, and I'd encourage everyone to take a look in the Indiana Code to look at it. They can be helpful in certain circumstances. This may not be one of those circumstances.
Right, and to back that up, anyone can request an ERA. So someone could come and request an ERA for a small parcel or a single piece of property. So I won't say that I wouldn't ever establish an ERA upon request by someone if it was the right thing for them at that time, but I can tell you that I would never do it without calling a town hall special meeting and let the people have the input. And that's where I say they did drop the ball. They didn't make sure that the people that were affected knew that this was happening before they voted on it. And that's where I think, if I was going to say they dropped the ball, it was by not talking to the people. This is a pretty large area of acreage to declare something like that over that many people's properties. I think that was just the wrong thing to do at the time. So.
Yeah, I think one thing you should also consider is that you got to put yourself in the shoes of the council in 2013. You know, there were certain financial factors, I think, in the county that made something like this attractive, and, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures sometimes. And you're wanting to, you know, you have a big push and a big pull for economic development and growth and things like that. And so, you know, some councils have to they're trying to think forward to get themselves out of financial binds, and this council's had to deal with some of that, because as we've said before, the can got kicked down the road quite a bit. And so I think sometimes they gravitate to these decisions when they may not be appropriate for the whole community.
At this time, Rob, then, are we doing the right thing to
Yeah,
just rescind it as far as what we're saying?
right, so there was a motion at the last council meeting in order that, I can't remember, who made the motion? I can't remember, was it Mark maybe? Mark moved to have this hearing so that we could consider the public input. Of course, nobody knows what the public's gonna say until they show up. It seems pretty clear right now, but the most important thing is that both sides have the opportunity to speak, and I think Terry and I were just talking about that. Is there anybody here that's in favor of the ERA? So, you know, yeah.
I'll just answer the question.
Okay, so there may be people who want to speak on behalf of it, but once the council has heard the public input, then, you know, frankly, you would take a motion to put it on the agenda for the next council meeting, and at that time, you need to declare what your intentions are with regard to it. But I think at that point, we've checked all the boxes as to doing it in the same manner in which it was created. Okay. So.
Well, sure. Chime in here. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I mean, you took time out. This is important. It's important for us to hear what folks in Madison and Sugar Creek Township think. And I don't know, have I heard from anybody in Sugar Creek, any of the township officials? Is there anybody here? What's the pulse in Sugar Creek? Do you want this ERA? Is this beneficial to you folks?
No, I haven't. I was taken aback in November when I read about it in the newspaper. That was the first that I had heard anything about it, and was hoping to find out some more information. And as I talked with my advisory board, they were as clueless as I was that we were even under this designation. So I think this was good to get this out for us to understand a little bit better what it was and why it's probably not something that we need at this point.
But it's important for me to know what the township folks are thinking, because you're the governing board for those townships. And, you speak for a lot of folks. I haven't heard any pro ERA designation whatsoever. So I haven't heard one thing said that we need this. And that's, the council has made it pretty clear that we're not interested in helping the windmill companies in any way of tax abatements, or, you know, if they're so profitable and they're gonna grow and do so well, why give them a break? They need to help pay all they can pay to the community, if that's the way it's gonna go. And I think it's been pretty clear from the council generally that we're not interested in giving them any tax abatement help. And so by revoking this, is that